My name is Eric Davis from Rutgers University, where I'm Director of Graduate Studies in the Department of Political Science and former Director of the Middle East Center. And it's my great pleasure and honor today to present Dr. Hanan al-Fatlawi, who will speak to us under the rubric of state-society questions. And she is a member of Parliament. She's the chairwoman, actually, of the Parliamentary Development Committee. And I've always been fascinated with the idea of the Iraqi parliament. First of all, even though there was obviously a parliament under the monarchy, and even Saddam had one after June 1980, I think the parliament today, and perhaps you'll correct me, is probably the first example of an institution where Iraqis from all different social strata and all different regions really have the opportunity to come together. So even if some people will be critical of the parliament that it doesn't necessarily accomplish a lot in terms of passing laws, but I think Dr. Fatlawi will actually dispute that as well. It's performing many, many important functions. Dr. Fatlawi is a graduate of BU, but not Boston University, but Baghdad University, where she is a medical doctor specializing in dermatology. I understand that you've also been involved in working with contagious diseases. I've had a chance to speak to her this morning, and she's been doing a lot beyond the parliament. And I think it's a great distinction that she's for 4 years been the advisor to Prime Minister al-Maliki. She's originally from Babel. She was also a member of the National Assembly when it was writing the Constitution, and she was the head of the Regional Government Affairs Committee. Now, as I said, she's the chairperson of the Parliamentary Development Committee, which is doing very important work in training members of the parliament in parliamentary procedures and providing for all sorts of their needs. So without further ado, I'm going to present the floor to you, and would you prefer to sit or to talk from the dais? Okay, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Professor Eric. First of all, I want to thank Professor Norton for such a great opportunity for me to be here and to hear from you. It's a great honor to be with you and to hear your perspective about Iraq. What do you think about our situation, your analysis, your ideas? And first of all, I want you to excuse my English language, because if I did some mistakes, maybe I am not, it's not my native language like you. My presentation is about the dynamic of parliamentary life in a free Iraq. How does the Iraqi parliamentary system works? In order to describe the current or the present system, we need to go briefly over the modern history of Iraq. I'm not going to bother you or wasting your time with a lot of details, but it's, in my opinion, it will be very important in order to understand the situation of Iraq, because many people, when they are talking about Iraq, compare it with another countries who are really a genuine democratic environment or a democratic country. These are the events following the First World War. The establishment of monarchy, Iraq was put under the League of Nations mandate system from 1922 till 1932. Iraq became an independent state in 1932 and entered the League of Nations. Iraq became a republic at 1958 through a military coup. From 1958 till 1968, Iraq experienced many coups till the Ba'ath Party took power in 1968. So from 1968 till 2003, the Ba'ath Party ruled, and most of you and all of you know the situation of Iraq during that period. Believe me, it's the darkest period for Iraq, the darkest period for our history during Saddam regime. Saddam destroyed the country, not only the infrastructure, destroyed our relationship with neighboring country, destroyed the people feeling of Iraqi nationalism, destroyed everything, treating people with, in a sectarian way. So I am not exaggerating thing if I said most of Iraqis are grateful for the multinational forces when they interfere in order to get rid of Saddam regime. Believe me, if without such interference, maybe Saddam till now and maybe more than 100 years ruling Iraq through himself and through his son and maybe grandson. we are, of course, grateful for the interference, but I am not going to say all of us are grateful for what happened later on. A lot of mistakes done. Probably we are now facing a lot of troubles as a consequences of the mistakes done during that time. So this is the reality. This is what Iraqis right now believe. At 2003, a new political system was installed. A description of a new system should be briefly described as a parliamentary system. As you know, we have parliamentary system according to our constitution. We have an election every 4 years. Since 2005, where our constitution was first adopted, we have 2 elections. The parliament elected from people directly, representative from all provinces, including Kurdistan region and other 15 provinces, according to the number of population. Each province had its own representative according to the number of population in each provinces. After the election, MPs inside the parliament elect the speaker first of all with a simple majority. Later on, they elect the president with a 2/3 majority, and this is one of the hurdles facing the political process in Iraq. It's not easy for any political caucus to get a majority of 2/3. That means we need a cooperation or alliance between different caucuses in order to get 2/3 majority to elect the president. Then the president nominates the prime minister candidate from the bigger caucus in the parliament. This is the way how our parliamentary system works. Of course, I am not going to say whether this is our choice to be a parliamentary system. Did we choose this system or someone choose it for us? Maybe it's a mixture. It's a maybe US desire, maybe UN, maybe some Iraqis, they prefer a parliamentary system. After we put the positive and negative thing, later on we will decide whether it's a perfect or ideal for a situation like Iraq with different group, different ethnic and different religious and different sectarian group. How laws in the parliament are passed? We have 2 ways to legislate any law. Either a project from the government to be passed through the parliament and voting with a simple majority for most of the laws and a special majority for certain laws like High Federal Court and others. Or as a suggestion from a permanent committee inside the parliament or from 10 MPs who give a suggestion in order to legislate a law. Voting of any law either through an agreement between caucuses, and I'm not sure this is the ideal way in other parliament, but in Iraq, we need to get agreement between all caucuses in order to pass any law. That probably could explain to you why, after 10 years of a parliamentary system, we don't have oil and gas law right now. We don't have High Federal Court law right now. We don't have parties law right now. Because reaching agreement between all political caucuses from different background, whether sectarian or ethnic or religious, it's not an easy. So voting on any law either through agreement or through majority, that's the usual way in other parliament. But in Iraq, happened several times. In each time we were voting on any law. According to majority, people were unhappy with that. And of course, all of you maybe heard about the last one when we passed the budget. With a majority, our brother from Kurdistan were unhappy and they withdrew from the parliament because they didn't involve in voting on the budget. What are the negative aspects of the system? Of course, I am not going to talk about all negative aspects in order not to be very pessimistic. But of course, we have many negative aspects, especially in the parliament right now. First of all, weak oversight role, and sometimes it's absent, because all caucuses participated in the government. All of them, they have ministers in the cabinet. So there is no real opposition. Weak, such alliance or such cooperation between all caucuses, such participation, produce weak government. At the same time, there is no real opposition. And this is one of the reasons that the government are not productive and the parliament not productive at the same time. Political conflicts and recurrent withdrawal of entire political bloc. I am not sure is that present everywhere in all parliament or just in Iraq. Every time you hear we have one caucus, entire caucus, whether a religious or ethnic or sectarian caucus, withdrawn from the parliament because they have a political issue or a political objection about something. I am not sure, is it usual in other parliament or just in Iraq? This is one of the issue that daily we are facing, and this prevents the parliament from working and from legislating law. Close result of election between different lists. This may be one of the reasons that produce such a weak parliament and a weak government, because all have to be, as I mentioned, all have to be participated in the government and produce weak government. Weak legislative law. You could imagine that, as I mentioned, after 10 years, we don't have, for example, health insurance law. After 10 years, this must be the first priority for a government. After 35 years of oppression, many laws, I think it should be the first priority for us, but because of weak legislative law, because of political conflicts, still we are waiting for such an important law, and we are dealing with things that's political rather than for the people interest. Misunderstanding of each authority. We have a constitution, we have a provision in our constitution that there is a complete distinction, complete separation between three authorities, the judicial and the legislative and the executive. But in reality, in Iraq, there is no clear distinction. Each authority tries to extend on the other. The legislative try to interfere with the judicial system and try to vote on judges, selecting judges, and interfere with courts. Same thing for interfering with independent commission. So there is no clear distinction between all three authorities. This is an example of the negative points in our parliamentary system. To be also realistic, we have to mention some positive aspect. When you ask someone, any Iraqi in the street, not all of them give you a negative impression. Many of them may give you a positive things that we gain from the change after 10 years. Of course, fair election and peaceful transference of power. Fair election not only for federal, for our parliament, but also we have a local government, provincial council election also every 4 years. Local government, we have decentralized system, and like previously, we have a strong central system. Now it's a federal government with multiple local government election every 4 years for the federal government and for the local government in each provinces. Of course, fair election and real election, unlike in the past, many of you heard about the result of election for Saddam, 99.9% of voters in each election. It's not real election. So many people happy that we are in the first step probably of democracy, and this will lead us to real democracy probably later on. Elected government, this is also a positive thing. Previously, you have appointed one. As I mentioned, nobody, without an international interference, nobody could know how long the appointed government will continue for 10 years or 100 years old. Decentralized system and sharing of power. Many people say that we are going or we are moving fast toward dictatorship. This is not true. In Iraq, according to our constitution, no one could take Iraq to a dictatorship, because within the constitution, there is a sharing of power. Nothing by one hand. We have local government, the budget divided between different provinces and the region according to the number of population. Job opportunity divided between different provinces according to the number of population. A scholarship divided between different provinces according to the number of population. Judicial system, it's supposed to be independent and work separately. The legislative, and there is a lot of safeguards for preventing us from going through dictatorship. Previously, we don't have a civil society now. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I think Iraq, have the biggest number of NGOs, whether they are active real NGOs or not, but we have thousands and thousands of NGOs. And this is also one of the important things. Of course, not all of them are active, but we have a good example of their activity when the time between the election and the announcement of the government took about 9 months. They raised the case against the federal court and they won it, and that's why they end the open session of the parliament, and they have the favor of establish the government after 9 years of delay. How the system could be reformed? Of course, fair election, elected government. I am proud to say, really, in Iraq, all women are grateful for the UN role and the USA role for presence of quota in our constitution. Quota for women, not less than 25%. Previously, we don't have women in politics unless they have to be a member of al-Ba'ath party. Now, women present in politics, present in parliament, present in provincial council, of course, below our ambition, below our expectation, but still it's a first step for women to prove themselves and to work. An Iraqi constitution, of course, to be in a country with a real constitution written by an Iraqi, better than be without a constitution. In a country with an election, better than a country without election. In a country with a civil society, better than in a country without civil society. In a country with an education system trying to improve itself, better than an education system just teaching us how to love Saddam Hussein and how to defend against Saddam Hussein. How the system could be reformed so that it could function properly. Of course, all of you heard about hurdles and trouble we are facing daily in our parliamentary system. That's why you heard a lot of voices say it's not a perfect or not an ideal choice for us. Probably we may need to a presidential system better to elect our president directly by the people rather than waiting for 1 year in order to build a government to reach a deal between different caucuses. I think reforms could be achieved by, if we will be able to have a majority government, this will produce a strong government with a strong opposition. In our situation, it's something I don't know how to say it, but it's strange. For example, a bloc or a caucus with 40 seats decide everything for the government. For example, Sadrist have just only 40 seats, but nothing in the country passed without an agreement from Sadrist. That means if we reach a state of majority government, this will reduce all wasting of time on all bad things, negative things. We may need appearance of national parties or national lists that not built on ethnic or religious or sect basis. Because as you know, in Iraq, all lists run the election either on sectarian basis or an ethnic basis. For example, Kurds, they have their own lists. Shia, they have their own list, and Sunni, they have their own list, and Christian, they have their own list. This division, I'm not too optimistic that we will reach it very soon, nowadays, or after weeks, or after, but hopefully after years, if we could bring a national party or a national list that could bring not all of them, but most of them together in one list, this could be a way to reach the real strong government. Building high federal court, it's really a shame after 10 years we don't have a high federal court based on a constitutional basis. As you know, in our constitution, the high federal court have a lot of important things, explanation of all laws, dealing with the conflicts between the center and the regional government and between federal government and provincial government, and all these conflicted issues should be dealt with by the high federal court. But till now, after 10 years, we don't have high federal court. We are working with an old high federal court. We need to build it on a constitutional base. Our constitution needs some amendments so that the system could work properly. All Iraqis, all parties, all politicians reach a fact that we need some amendment to our constitution, because a lot of things, writing a constitution in a very short time, put us in front of a lot of challenges. This is one of the messages that daily we say it to our brother in other Arabic countries. Don't go very fast. You need to stop. You need to think. You need to go through things that in the favor of your country, rather than just to make someone else happy about you. We did our constitution in 1 year. We did our constitution in 5 months or 6 months. We did it with agreement of all. This is not the idea. They have to be patient in order to get a real constitution without a lot of hurdles, without a lot of troubles. Conclusion. I want to be optimistic, really, to give you a little bit a bright picture, unlike all these negative issues. We have to be optimistic. We have to think for a better future. We have to work hardly in order to reach a prosperous and safe and peaceful Iraq. But of course, this will not come with wishes and with praying. We have to work hardly. I am not very optimistic that it will be very soon, maybe tomorrow or the day after, but with the cooperation of all political parties, with the cooperation of all participating groups in politics, we could reach it. Many reasons for that, because we have no another choice. The other choice is failure. Failure is not bad just for Iraq. Failure is bad for the whole region. Iraq is a rich country. Iraq is an oil country that other countries depend on it. So we need to give a good example for our neighbors. We have to build a good relationship with others. Of course, we need to work hardly in order for the future, at least not for all of us, but for our children. Thank you for attention, and I apologize again for my broken language. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have some time for questions. Okay, so let me start. Yes, would you people identify themselves?
Hi, I'm Niseba from the Kennedy School. I found your vision really interesting for how Iraqi politics could change. So you talked about having maybe a directly elected prime minister or president figure, and having a more majoritarian politics where you have a coalition, a cross-sectarian coalition in government and a real opposition. That would require two things. It would require electoral reform, and I wonder if there's any appetite for electoral reform in the Iraqi parliament. Do you ever see that kind of reform happening, maybe away from a proportional representation system? And have there been any moves to create genuine cross-sectarian national lists? And do you see these coalitions forming, potentially in preparation for 2014? Because what I've been seeing is actually more fractionalisation and actually much less diverse lists than we saw in the last elections. But I very much like your vision, and I'd like you to talk more about what the obstacles are and whether you see this happening.
Thank you for the question. I have to clarify something. When I said a lot of voices now saying we have to move to presidential system, that's mean we are not. That's not mean that we have tomorrow will move. It needs a constitutional amendment, because our constitution says that we have a parliamentary system. But because I want to explain the hurdles and troubles we are facing daily, this will make people, politicians and usual people, to say maybe this is not an ideal system for us. That's not mean we are moving to presidential. It needs a constitutional amendment, and constitutional amendment in Iraq, something very difficult. I'm not saying impossible, nothing impossible, but something very, very, very difficult, because any provision, any amendment, if not refused by 2/3 of 3 provinces, will pass, and this is impossible. We have 3 provinces from Kurds, we have 3 provinces from Sunni, and we have 3 provinces from Shia. So that's need an agreement between all groups in order to pass any amendment. The next election, next week, we have an election for provincial council election. Of course, we don't have any national list, but in certain provinces, many groups unite together in one list, in one alliance. Today, with such a sectarian tension, I am not optimistic that we will have a national list. Later on, after we will overcome such a bad period right now we are facing, probably we may reach a national list. People may realize that this is the better solution for them, rather than going through sectarian parties or sectarian lists.
Yeah, Toby Dodge, thanks. I thought it was an excellent talk, and I thought it was an excellent talk. There's very little to disagree with, but just to pick up on the first question, I think there would be agreement across the vast majority of Iraqi politics that the system is flawed, that the constitution needs to be reformed, So nothing to disagree with there, but maybe this is an unfair question, but I wanted to push you on how you think that process could move forward. How can there be a move towards reworking the Constitution, breaking or at least mediating the power of the caucuses? If it's not electoral reform, how would, I mean, as a parliamentarian, how do you suggest that the politics move forward?
As I said, it's not impossible. Of course, if we will reach a relative stability rather than stability at all level. As you know, Iraq now is a scene for terrorism. Terrorism may be one of the reasons that create tension between different sects. One group blame the other that they are the source of terrorism, and the other, they have a lot of victims daily, hundreds and hundreds died from terrorism. If we could overcome, or if we could pass this period and reach a political stability, it's not impossible to amend the Constitution. All of us, whether those who are happy with the government, those who are unhappy with the government, all of them realize that we need an amendment of the Constitution. So if we have the will, if we have the intention to amend the Constitution, it's not impossible. People will hear from politicians, people will hear from religious leaders. This is the situation in Iraq. If we could reach a relative stability, we could reform. This is one of the way to change the situation, but it's not the only way. It's not the only way. That means the situation in Iraq, it's not easy to change or correct it unless we amend the Constitution. No, of course, agreement between political caucuses, positive participation of caucuses, all this fighting corruption together, fighting terrorism together. It's not working as a participant in the government and at the same time destroying the government from inside, working against the government from inside, trying to interfere with judicial system. If you accuse someone about terrorism, the whole group or the whole sect be crazy about it. How could judicial system work? We have to separate different authorities. We have to give rights to other. Okay, sorry.
Okay, next question.
Dr. Hanan, thank you so much for being here, really. We share a lot in common. Actually, I went to the medical school in Basra. She went to Baghdad with 2 years difference. But I was in Iraq 2 months ago. And if you ask any Iraqi on the street, the priorities in their minds is really services and corruption. Where are these in the priorities of the parliament? This is a very sort of a pressing, immediate issue. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Really, I am sad to say it, that the parliament is very far away from the people need. Our parliament totally involved with political conflicts. That's why I said very important law. Right now, after 10 years, we don't have such as health insurance or high federal court or parties law or all these things. The parliament always involved with political conflicts rather than deal with people needs. Any law come from the government, and the political caucuses, I'm not saying all of them, most of them, when they found that this law will bring some positive things to the government, people could find something positive done by the government, immediately refused. For example, infrastructure law that build a lot of schools, build a lot of streets, trains, and all these things, home for poor people, immediately refused by the parliament because it's come from the government. So it's a shame, but this is the reality. Our parliament a little bit away from the people, but I think people could change that because they could punish the political caucuses, the party that always involved just with his own benefits and own privileges rather than dealing with their own needs.
We have several more questions. Go in order in the back.
Just a comment. The medical school in Baghdad is the most competitive university in Iraq. Only the brightest get in there, and you can tell from listening to Dr. al-Fatlawi. That was an impressive talk. I'd like to address the issue of reform of the parliament. Somebody addressed it earlier. One way, perhaps, is to move away from lists by setting up an electoral system that would allow people to run as individuals. In other words, having a districting that would be similar to what you have in this country. This would have an additional advantage, which would address the point that you just raised, which was to strengthen the link between the elected official and the person who elected him or her. Important point. I don't know where we are in that. Is this possible? Another issue regarding reform of the parliament, one of the problems that we have in our parliament is getting a quorum. The Iraqi parliament has one of the highest quorums in the world. If you look at other parliaments, I think the quorum in the French parliament is something like 34 members of parliament. In the British parliament, it's 10% or something like that. Can this be one way to allow the parliament to meet more often, effectively, and discuss laws and present them and move ahead with them? One other option was to allow proxy voting. I don't know where we are in that. I think these are things that could be considered as tricks to help the parliament be more effective and more responsive to the population. Thank you.
Of course, we could move to the open list, but the law should be legislated inside the parliament. And I guarantee you that all political caucuses will not happy with an individual election, because I heard a lot of voices nowadays. They try to return us back to a closed list rather than an open list. Now we have an open list. Of course, it's not in the favor of political caucuses, but with the pressure of the religious leader, it's with the pressure of al-Marji'iyya, we moved from a closed list to an open list. It's not a 100% open list, it's a 50-50. You choose the list and then choose the member. But it's not easy, believe me. Passing such a law in a parliament like this with such a political conflict, of course they will calculate their benefits, how much seats they will gain later on before they vote on the law, unless someone press on them. And I'm not sure whether al-Marji'iyya this time will also interfere or not, so it's not easy. About the number of the parliament, according to the population, for each 100,000, we have to have one representative. Things, as long as it is in the constitution, impossible to change unless...
I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. In order for you to have a quorum, in order to meet and to discuss, you need to have nisab. You have to have a very high percentage of members of parliament present.
This is also very difficult.
So if you reduce that, you'd be able to meet more efficiently.
As long as there is no trust between different political groups, between Shia and Sunni and Kurds, so nobody will agree about that. That means Shia alone, they pass any law in the favor of themselves and beyond the favor of others. Kurds the same and Sunni the same. So it's one of the safeguards, one of the positive things in order to make other trust the other, the presence all of them, at least half of the parliament.
Yeah, well, actually, mine is not a question. I just wanted to explain, elaborate on one or two things. First of all, Iraq, before 2003, never had free and fair elections. Even during monarch, elections were fixed.
The cities,
Fixed. That's now this is a very positive step. Secondly, I think all our political philosophy in parliament, in government, in ruling the country, and even on the constitution has been based on consensus of Iraqi populations. Because Iraq is a multinational, multi-religious society. And we lack the democratic process and democratic behavior. That's why most of the actions in parliament and in the government is still related to consensus of opinion. And at present, I don't think we can change that. Yes, majority, minority is a good idea, make governments more effective, decisions can be taken quicker, but I think we are still not ready to approach that at present time. Maybe once we have more established our constitutions and established democracy and fair treatment of every political group and every ethnic group, then we might go for majority and minority. But at present, everything is on consensus, and this is a delaying actions for certain activities in Iraq.
Do you want to comment on that?
Thank you for all the questions and for your attention. Thank you very much.
If you have two more questions, will you take two more
okay.
questions? We have a question here and a question here.
Well, I'm Asma from BU. I have mainly comments rather than questions. For example, Ms. Fatlawi keeps expressing her gratitude for the US invasion to Iraq. Frankly speaking, the majority of Iraqis do not feel grateful for this. Even though Saddam was a dictator, if we are not brave enough to overthrow him, then we do not deserve given freedom. So we are not grateful. The other thing you keep, with my respect, of course, you keep talking about dictatorship and Saddam and sectarianism. Well, yes, Saddam was a dictator, but after these 10 years, we discovered that he was a mild dictator. Because what we are seeing, what we are seeing, I live in Iraq.
How long you've been in Iraq?
I came through a few months ago.
Okay.
What we are seeing now in Iraq is worse thousands of times what we had in his time. Explosions, cars, Qaeda. We never had Qaeda in Saddam time. We never had militias. Yes, he was a dictator. Yes, he was hard, but he wasn't a murderer in the same way we have now. It is now that we have sectarianism in Iraq. It's now, not before that. Your brother, for example, was a high member in the Ba'ath Party. And now he's a high general in the military. And now Ms. Fatlawi is against discussing, or at least abortion, I don't know, the act of Musa'ala wa Adala. This is sectarianism. You know that not all Ba'athists were against people. When I was a student in the university, nobody was allowed to speak in the sense of Shia and Sunni. Yes, probably we didn't have the good sense of nationalism to Iraqis, but I always had friends from different sects, from different ethnicities. Nobody was allowed to speak in the sense, are you Shia or Sunni? Now we cannot control our students in the university. And then talking about corruption,
Give
the
me a
Ministry of
time to
Trade-
answer. You raised
Just
a lot.
this question.
I think that's enough.
Talking
I
about
will answer all your
corruption, the
questions.
minister,
Believe me.
If you allow me, the Minister of Trade, Falah al-Sudani, who belongs to the same party of Dawah, Ali Dabbagh, who is the spokesman of Prime Minister Maliki, the Deputy Minister of Education, all of them are accused of corruption. They stole millions of Iraq, and they were protected by al-Maliki. Falah al-Sudani, for example, was interrogated in the parliament.
So why don't you let Dr. Fatlawi?
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I respect your idea, but believe me, you are far away from Iraq and reality. First of all, I have to correct some of your information. My brother wasn't a member of al-Ba'ath Party. Believe me, you heard from media, but I am telling you the truth. When you heard about that a few weeks ago, when I have a lot of interrogation, a lot of discussion, when my voice was loud against certain bad things, against negative things from other group, of course they have to find something against me and put it in media. It's not only my brother was from al-Ba'ath. They said my father died at 1991 with cancer, nothing, not related to Ba'ath Party. They said I have a lot of, I was a prisoner and all. If you could watch media what said, probably you will be one of the, I don't know, Israeli or CIA agent, or I don't know. We don't, this is the media. Maybe I will take your name and search about it in the internet. You could find many things. If you listen to me carefully, when I discussed the issue, I said, most of us, I didn't say all of us, most of us, and I'm expressing myself, and I'm proud of that, grateful for the change. Otherwise, Saddam right now, ruling Iraq in the same bad way. I spent more than 30 years of my life under Saddam regime. I don't know how long you lived in Iraq, and where, and in which party, and which provinces, and from which sect. But believe me, no one of us was happy. You said there is no sectarism during Saddam regime. When you daily lost one of your brother or relative or friends in a war with Iran, we don't know why. Many years, let me answer. Spent many years of our life in unfair war, we don't know why. This is Saddam Hussein. You are now in love with him and try to show his positive side. Going with Kuwait, one of our brothers, Muslim, invading them for what? Destroying our economy, destroying our oil resources, giving pieces of our lands to others because of his criminal attitude toward others, killing innocent people in a group, burying them who are alive. This is Saddam Hussein, who are proud of him, and you said the previous regime better than now. Now we are talking. 3 months, 4 months, people demonstrating in the street. No one said, go, you're home. Previously, if I look about Saddam photo, I am afraid, because if I said like this, they may kill me. We are afraid inside our home. You can't imagine the time during sanction when your kids are diseased and you don't find medicine for him. You can't eat 5 or 6 members of one family. They have to share one bread. Believe me, you are very wrong. You are away from reality. This is a new Iraq. People are expressed themselves. People are happy what they have. Of course, there are negative things. There are violation of human rights. In any new democracy, you could find that. In USA, who have a long time of democracy, you could find negative things. But previously, sectarianism started during Saddam regime because he crushed the majority, who are 65% of the population, and putting them down, oppressed them, and put those who are 25% on the top and giving them all privileges. No one of us could be study during the time and getting postgraduate. Who one of us could go outside and get scholarship? Now go see a scholarship from Mosul, from Anbar, from Basra, from Kurdistan. No one said this is Sunni or Shia. We are trying to get rid of all this disease done by Saddam Hussein. Don't blame us about it.
Last question.
Well, in view of the last exchange, I will forego my turn, except to say that we must acknowledge that the Saddam regime was a sectarian regime. It was a criminal regime, and all Iraq benefited from that. And I am honored to have spent the best part of my life fighting it. Other questions I will leave for private exchange. Thank you.
Just one point to my sister. Thank you, Mr. Samir. As I said, not all of us, as I said, most of us happy with the change. I said not all of us happy with what happened later on and the mistake done. That means we have to mention and to be grateful for the positive thing, and at the same time mention the negative thing, leaving the border open for terrorism to enter, resolution of the army, and all these bad decisions. Of course, we are paying right now for them. So we have to mention the positive thing and negative thing at the same time.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank Dr. Hanan.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody today for their thoughtful presentation and questions and comments. We're at the end of our schedule. We were going to ask Megan O'Sullivan to make some comments. I'm going to ask Megan if she wouldn't mind waiting until tomorrow. Is that all right, Megan? Because in about 15 minutes or so, somebody comes in and sets up a wedding here or some other event. But if it's an Iraqi wedding, we have to stay. It's too much fun to leave. But I do want to say that we have heard some strong opinions today, and this shouldn't surprise us. I think it was Abdul Latif this morning who talked about, I don't think he used the word, but sort of pathologies of Iraq. And pathologies that have different sources. In some cases, the former regime. In other cases, an occupation that did not go particularly well, poor planning on the part of outside powers and all of that. Many of us are aware of the divisions within Iraqi society, and it shouldn't be surprising to hear evidence of those divisions, because they're real and they exist, and they impede the kind of reforms and so on that some of the speakers have talked about today. And I hope in our discussions tomorrow we can address those in a constructive way, and not just in terms of sort of understanding the pathologies, but in terms of moving beyond them. And I say that with all sincerity, that we can think about sort of creative steps that can be accomplished by Iraqis, or perhaps can be accomplished with the help of outside powers to sort of move the situation in a constructive direction. But I want to thank all of you for your presence and participation today. Invite all of you to join sort of chapter 2 of our events, and that's at Harvard University tonight, beginning at 6 p.m., when Stephen Hadley, the former National Security Advisor to former President George Bush, and 3 of our Iraqi guests, Samir Samadei, Hanan al-Fatlawi, and Abdul Latif Rashid, will have a kind of panel discussion moderated by Megan O'Sullivan at the institution I always call the other place, you know, the one across the river. And I do hope you'll join us for that. That will run until about 7:10 or so. So about an hour plus. And if you're going to join us tomorrow, we'll be starting at the same time with a breakfast about 9:30. We'll try and open the session. We will open the session at 10. We'll go to a little bit after 2 tomorrow afternoon. But we're not in this building. We're on the same street, down the street, number 67, which is the Pardee Center, which is another center at Boston University. So sort of mark that in your notebook. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I hope some of you are with us, all of you are with us tonight over in Cambridge. And I wish you a good night, and thank you very much.